Greetings and welcome to today's Army Finance and Comptroller Profession series. What an exciting segment we have for you today, where we're going to bring to you the senior leadership of ASA FM&C, the Honorable Ms. Spangler, and the Military Deputy General Chamberlain. We also have some special guests that are going to tune in, so looking forward to what's going to come ahead of us for the next hour or so. And again, to the audience members, wow, what great attendance. Over 600 people right now, 630. The numbers just keep going up. And I see folks are actually putting in where they're tuning in from, so this is really exciting. And now, you know what, we're not going to wait any further. We're going to continue on. So over to the Honorable Ms. Spangler.
So I'm very grateful to be able to do this, to have the opportunity to address so many of you, and to have brought several key members of the team with us as we have this discussion. So thank you, Sergeant Singh, for doing this for us. You know, you have done a wonderful job with these sessions. I know you've gotten great participation from people, and I think that's a lot of because of what you bring to the discussion. So thank you for doing it and for highlighting the breadth and the depth and the experience and the diversity of the profession. So all of you people out there, please keep joining in on these sessions, because I think we have a great diversity of topics and speakers coming up as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our priorities. So some of you may know that the FM has a mandate in public law to do a 5-year strategy. This is supposed to be to help us improve financial management and make improvements to our processes and our systems, as well as how we make progress on the audit. The previous administration published a strategy in November of 2020 called the Army Finance Strategy. And as I looked at it when I first came online in August of last year, I came to believe that the outcomes and the strategic goals that they put forward were really right for us. They still resonated with me. They resonated today in the things that we need to do. So I didn't think those needed to be changed, but what I did think was lacking in that strategy was some tactical goals and a real implementation plan. So I started in to work on developing that kind of a plan. So I think this document is going to provide a strong foundation for the workforce. And my focus has been on establishing the timelines and the different tactical efforts underneath the different campaign planks that we need to pursue in the next 2 years. And I was going to keep the longer term objectives that are resident in that plan. So we have 4 major priorities within the plan, within the office, and for the financial community at large. And our team here is going to talk about some of those efforts in greater detail. The first part of the strategy talks about effectively resourcing the Army. And so I have to stress here that this is going to be a team effort, and that everybody out in the field plays a key role in doing this as well. It also requires participation from decision makers at a lot of different levels. The Army FM community is truly the backbone of the department. We are the honest broker trusted by the Army and the nation to be strong fiscal stewards. Lieutenant General Chamberlain will address this more in a few minutes, and Major General Bennett and Mr. Merman will talk about it as well and give you some updates on where we've been on some of our budget issues. The next focus areas we want to talk about are achieving sustainable auditability, and then reforming our business processes and our systems as well. The Army continues to make great progress in the audit, but we understand that we need to renew our focus and strengthen our approach and tackle some of the persistent challenges that we've had. We haven't kept up with some system changes that we've needed to make to our primary accounting system, GFIBS, and we now understand that many of our OSD initiatives can't be executed until we implement some of those changes. And further, we've come to realize that we need to be more aggressive in using other forums and senior leaders to push auditability and the roles of other parts of the Army. So we need help here in holding people accountable for progress. So Mr. Ramsey, as our DASA FOI, will give an update on a business systems environment, the financial statement audit, and the kind of changes we can anticipate. So the bottom line here on these 2 planks is that we need to provide our workforce with the right tools and the systems they need to succeed. And then, of course, it is the workforce that is critical. Our hope here is to provide new tools and improve our processes, and we will rely on the workforce to demonstrate value to our commanders. Ms. Kim Scott is joining us today to give an update on some key training dates and events and talk about her role as our Director of Workforce Development and Training. So I want to talk a little bit too about leader development. I need everybody out there to really be involved and to make it a passion. I need you to know your people and know what motivates them. Invest the time in them. Supervisors, I need you to take note of award opportunities and help get your team recognized and educate them on training events. We will be recognizing people at the PDI in 2 weeks from now, and so we're all excited about the opportunity to get together again in the flesh and actually give out some recognition, some awards. So these opportunities could be the difference on whether or not our people remain in civil service, whether we can keep them motivated and involved in their organizations. So for everybody, I need you to take advantage of those professional development opportunities that are out there. The Army offers some really great training opportunities, and please try and look for them and participate in them. So I want you to think holistically about how your role fits into the big picture and don't operate in isolation. So last, in closing, I'm going to say, remember these focus areas that unite us. We are a dedicated and mission-driven profession, and we sincerely thank you from up here for everything that you do every day. Have fun with your teams also, and get to know each other better. Next week, we're having a field day here at ASA FM&C, so we're actually living up to that opportunity. I want you to look for how you can be a part of solutions to effectively resource our Army, help with our audit mission, and be an advocate for the workforce. And I think from that, I turn it over to Lieutenant General Chamberlain.
Thanks, ma'am, and you're a hard act to follow, but I appreciate the introduction. And Sergeant Singh, thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me back a second time. This is, I guess it's almost been about a year, but I do appreciate coming back and all that you have done as well. So Ms. Spangler hit many of the topics, some very important topics for our profession. There's a lot that's going on, and I would tell you that this year, the Department of Defense has did very well with our budget request for FY23. But for FY22, we're now in the middle of the year and we are executing, and we, as always, have more requirements than we do have funding. And that's when we as a profession have to think and have to help our senior leaders and the decision makers and provide them with the information to make the best informed decisions when it comes to our resources. And that's what we do as a profession. And it doesn't matter if we're in uniform or if we do it with our civilians. We have to work together in order to do that and provide the leadership with the information they need so that as we move forward, we are resourcing the Army's highest priorities. And I'm going to try to avoid talking too much of budget because I know the Army Budget Office is on with General Bennett and Mr. Merriman, and they will talk a little bit about that. But I am just excited to be here this morning. And Sergeant Singh, I would ask you what your thought is of coming back to the building a second time and seeing the budget process after having been here one time. So what are your thoughts on some of that?
Sir, you know, you always do this to me where you pose questions back. It doesn't work like that. The facilitation is from my end. But again, thank you for that question. I will just say that it's still a learning process on my end. But it's good to see how the cycle actually works, you know, compared to what I saw it the first time. But we're not going to let you go that easy. So, ma'am, again, thank you very much for delivering that message on the focus areas and the guests that are going to be on shortly. But real quick, ma'am, can you tell us a little bit about that piggy bank that's sitting right there?
So actually, we've been talking about that piggy bank some here in the office and whether or not we want to try and recreate them for people who are leaving the ASA FM&C office. I inherited this when I came, so I can't give you all the detailed background on it, but it does seem to have a really nice decal on it. It is symbolic of the money. I guess people in prior administrations or who sat in this desk used to have people put in 2 cents for when they were giving their 2 cents worth of information. far as I know, nobody's done that yet since I've been up there, but I'm always willing to have people consider that possibility.
Awesome. So one question that we do want to ask, ma'am, since you've been in the seat actually, right? What are some of the improvements that you have seen from your peripheral, and what are some things that you're also looking to maybe focus more on?
Well, so I tell you, one of the things that I feel really strongly about is what we're doing with the audit. And I do think that we were a little bit potentially unfocused up here at the headquarters before I got in. And so one of the things we've done, what's important to me, is the tone of the top memo that we had the secretary sign. And in that memo, she was directing us and giving us authority and power, in my mind, more to do some things that we know we've needed to do. The one thing she had us establish in particular was resurrecting the audit committee. So the audit committee, now chaired by the under and the vice, I think gives us that enhanced ability to reach out to the commands at the very senior level and to drive some change and accountability through that process. So I think we have a good bit more work to do on this. We have to really focus the efforts of what we're doing under the audit, harmonized with the systems, to really be able to demonstrate to OSD and the Congress in particular what we're doing on audit, and that we really are making good progress here.
Thank you, ma'am. So Lieutenant General Chamberlain, no stranger to the position that you currently are in, right? Let's talk about, things that, you are also working on, and, the challenges of being in that position, especially with how the last year kind of played out and what we're going to in the near future.
Yeah, so as most folks know, it was about an 86 pace step walk down the hall from the director of the Army budget down to the military deputy to the ASA FM&C. So where I go from a very specific focus on the Army budget, I'm now having a much broader look across the ASA FM&C footprint. I'm the principal advisor to Honorable Spangler, principal advisor on finance and financial operations and comptrollership with the chief of staff and the secretary of the Army. So between myself and Ms. Spangler, we help make sure that the Army senior leaders have the information they need, as I was talking about earlier, to make those types of decisions. When we look at the budget for fiscal year 22 and 23, and I'm going to try not to steal ABO's thunder, it's been an exciting couple of years. I would tell you that, you can go back to as early as 2020, 2019 with the start of the pandemic and all of the challenges that we've had. So the last several years have been very, very dynamic, and this year has been no different. You can go back to the September-August timeframe when we went back to Afghanistan, and even more recently here, in February, as we went to Europe and we deployed a brigade in less than a week to 10 days. We sent them to Europe, and they were up and doing their firing tables, pulling equipment out of the apps, which demonstrates the Army's ability to be ready and the money and the focus that we have put on readiness over the last several years. We can't do that by ourselves. We do that as part of the sustainment community. We are part of that team, and it is a testament to not just the funding, but to our ability to do the emergency deployment readiness and rehearsal exercises, those EDREs, to demonstrate the force projection that we have as an Army and as a nation. And that's been very impressive, and it takes the entire team. And both the Secretary and the Chief of Staff of the Army have asked us to express our thanks to everyone for all their support.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. At this time, is there anything that you would like to share additional that you have not shared already before we continue forward and we actually go to our next guest?
No, I think we're ready to go to the next guest.
Awesome, ma'am. All right. So this time gives me great pleasure to.
What, I don't get the.
There you go, sir. I thought we were going to come back to you later. I apologize.
All right. I'll be quiet.
Are we sure about that, or are you going to make me come to your office later then?
You're always going to come back down to the office. We'll have a conversation.
All right. So this time we're actually going to move forward, and we're going to go to the Director of the Army Budget, and and the Deputy Director of Army Budget as well. So over to General Bennett.
Good morning, Finance and Comptroller community. Ms. Spangler, General Chamberlain, thanks for your opening comments and kind of setting the stage and conditions for this discussion today that we're going to have. First, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks for what you do each and every day in helping us build the readiness across our Army, whether that be future readiness, what we call that modernization, or current readiness with our OMA and MILPERS funding to build that readiness across our Army, one transaction at a time. It takes the entire team at Echelon from getting the requirement validated all the way down through execution, disbursement, and then as we always have to come back to it and prepare for the audit because it's coming. So we'll hit a lot of that here today. I do want to touch again on one of Ms. Spangler's points about effectively resourcing the Army. And I want to hit a little bit on the resiliency that we've seen across our finance and comptroller community in the past year. We've had to do a lot from everything from continuing resolutions. We had a fairly lengthy period this year. With that, we've had those over the past 2 decades, but also in having to deal with new situations, new types of resourcing, and new authorities, which is another thing that we have to dive into a lot, into making sure that we can enable and allow the execution of funds, in some cases to even secure the funds, depending on the type. So I'll hit on one was the regional water contamination in Hawaii. A unique situation out there for our soldiers and their families across several installations on the island there. And we ended up trying to figure out how to get entitlements to take care of them because they had to move them out of their on-post housing into temporary quarters. So many of them were in hotels for some extended periods of time, others just short periods of time, but also having to incur new costs because they weren't, again, in their homes. Trying to figure out how, one, we could get an authority or enable a capability to enable them to pay for that, because again, it's not a normal thing that we would need to do, fortunately. But working with our folks in the policy realm, with our team in G1, M&RA up through OSD, PNR, we came up with a way to allow the payment of temporary lodging allowance while they're there on the island to help cover that time period when they were away from their homes until they were able to get the water system cleared and able to be used again, and through their homes to also get their homes ready for reoccupation. That took a lot of effort to include our DFAS teammates, the use of FEMCOM team, as well as the ABO team, working with OSD to identify the resources needed and to get those resources secured, because we actually got the funding in continuing resolution, something new that we haven't seen in a while, to enable that capability and to take care of those soldiers and their families out there. And for I know those, if we have folks, although it's pretty early in Hawaii right now, but they might be on. Thanks to them for what they did, and for the folks here within the Army of the Potomac, as I call them, which the Army Budget Office is a part of, to enabling, getting the resourcing and the policy authorities to enable that and taking care of those soldiers and families out there. So with that, Mike, I think you've got another idea too, in an area we express some significant resiliency in resourcing our Army.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Merman, General Bennett's deputy. Another unique area that we've been working on, thanks to our teammates here in the Pentagon, at Materiel Command and forward in Europe, is the Ukraine effort that's going on right now. We start cash flowing those efforts when things first started kicking off, and then we got a supplemental later on. Right now, working with the Assistant Secretary of Acquisition, ASALT, and the G3 folks, and of course the logisticians, we managed to accomplish quite a bit in terms of presidential drawdown, in terms of equipment, transporting that equipment and getting over there. As General Bennett mentioned already, we were able as a nation to deploy 2 Armored Brigade combat teams, pull that equipment out of VAPS, and start pulling the training exercises in less than 14 days. General Bennett has told folks in congressional testimony that no other nation on earth can do that. And we all know that financing is a key part of that mission. So I thank everybody's efforts. We're currently working on cost transferring the cash flow dollars, working with DFAS and working with the Pentagon, and of course, the folks out in Europe and at Materiel Command to cost transfer that to the supplemental. And we greatly appreciate that. I'm not sure if people are tracking, but we just passed, the Senate just passed the second supplemental, So no rest for the weary, right, sir? We will continue to finance and cost transfer and get that funding to the soldiers and everybody that are needed. And once again, we're creating history because for the second time, for the first time since World War II, second time in history, we're actually got signed the Lend-Lease Act. So we're going to be trying to work through how we're going to implement that with all the great support that we have out there in the field. But that's just another example. Sir, I think you're going to talk about how finance assisted Operation Allied Welcome.
Another tough one that we had to wrestle right towards, we had got the mission to get out of Afghanistan late in the fiscal year, as we all know. And then we close that out. That's part one. We always do those kind of things at the end of a fiscal year as well. But then we needed to take care of our partners and our allies and their families as a part of that whole process. And again, a lot of authority questions here, a lot of resourcing, a lot of interagency coordination required, because this is a combination of the entire federal government. I mean, everything from the Department of Homeland Security to Customs and Border to the State Department to get this mission kind of in the right, first of all, to get the right capabilities there to receive our partners and their families, as well as to take care of their immediate needs and then get them on to the next part of that process. That took, and again, an effort at Echelon, thanks to the team at Northcom and Army North. Northcom really on the policy side, and kind of there were the DoD's main representative in that with the department here, and then Army North, really their GH shop, kind of they really shouldered what I'll call the execution piece of this and enabling that the funding that we're able to use. We did basically work towards enabling the use of the Overseas Humanitarian Disaster Assistance and Civic Aid, or ODACA, funding and authority for the first time in CONUS. Again, in support of, it started at OCONUS, but it came into CONUS, but that first time we've used that to enable that type of capability. But that funding allowed our role to provide it to take care of all of those partners and their families. So along with our State Department partners, again, Department of Homeland Security and others, the Reserve and National Guard and all compo effort as well played a heavy role in this. Fort McCoy was our largest installation with the number of individuals that passed through this. I think the Army handled over 48,000 families that came through there as a part of that whole process. So, but again, the ODACA funding are part of it, from identifying the requirement, which they did out there in the field. We set up and established commands to manage the whole process there at the sites, again, in an interagency environment. And a lot of our comptrollers, that was a unique and challenging experience for them on that. So if you ever get a chance to talk with any of them about that, I would encourage you to do so, because it is a very different perspective, because many times we don't own the requirement. We were just resourcing it. So they, in fact, validated it for us. And then we ended up resourcing it with the funding through the ODACA funding that we had there. So, and again, that all passed through the calendar, really through the end of the fiscal year into the new fiscal year. So we had to work with the Congress and the committees as well to make sure that they would provide the resourcing that we needed to enable that mission. So again, thanks at Echelon to the teams that helped out there. And that's again, across our Army. There were 5 primary Army installations to include Guard and Reserve that supported this effort, 8 total across the DoD. And the mission still continues in Leesburg here in Virginia for the next couple of months, we suspect it. And we do think it'll wrap up by the end of this fiscal year right now with the plan. So, but with that, I think I'm turning it back over to you, Mike.
Yes, sir. I would also just mention that we're still fighting a good fight with the ODACA funds to get that for restoration, right? He's daily talking to the folks on policy and Department of State, and we're just about this close to get those facilities restored. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about acquisitions. As we know, with the Stand Up of Futures Command, the Army has managed to reduce the timeline from acquisition to fielding from decades to a couple of years. And what I want to just mention this today is implementing one of our prioritizations in the Army's modernization, and I want to talk about R&D Budget Authority number 8, which is in the software and digital area. And I'm going to just read from a card because I want to make sure I get it right. It's a unique appropriation for software to be funded as a single budget item with no separation between R&D, production, and sustainment. The Army currently is running a pilot program in defensive cyber about north of $40 million, and it is as close we can get to colorless money than we've ever been able to obtain in the Department of Defense. And these guys and gals are literally shrinking down the identification of the requirement to fielding to a matter of hours. So the cyber warriors are identifying a threat, and we're able to quickly turn around and help everybody and get things and products and tools in place. So once again, we have a unique authority and a unique capability that is funded and financed, and the Army is doing great things in terms of defending our homeland. So I just want to say that in terms of these unique requirements, we have to spend a lot of time talking to lawyers and providing counsel to senior leaders. And I think there's another area, sir, you're going to mention that took us really out of our comfort zone. Over.
Yes. So we had to go back and take a little bit of Econ 101 in terms of inflation. I know we're all experiencing this from going into the grocery store or heading out to fill our cars with gas, but it's something that's it's impacting our Army. What we're having to do, first off, is do a little education with everyone on all of the different indices that are being used out there. You keep hearing inflation's 8%. What do they mean with that? Well, generally, when people use that term, when you hear the 8% now currently, they're talking about the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. Well, if you know how we build our budget, that's not the index we use. But people are still comparing it to that. So that's something we had to talk with folks about to help educate them with it. We in the Department of Defense use the GDP, or the Gross Domestic Product deflator, to build our budget. And additionally, our pay raises are all tied to the Employment Cost Index. So you can see it's a fairly complicated thing, and something we're having to continue to educate. And we're working with our partners at Echelon on this as well to start identifying where we're seeing some of these impacts out there. A lot of things right now, we have a lot of firm fixed price contracts, and you won't start seeing inflation in those until they come up for their next award or recompete. Then you'll begin to see that inflation. So that's not an immediate effect. Fuel, we have seen price increases with fuel as we try to make sure that the working capital fund that DLA uses to provide our fuel to our units and organizations remain solvent. We've seen price increases there. So that's a little bit more of an immediate impact. I do expect we're going to see some in our TDY as our hotel rates increase, those kinds of things. But that also factors into, will the per diem committee actually raise the rates to meet them? That's something we've all got to kind of work through as we look towards it. So we're working with the team at Echelon to get after that, to make sure we capture the impact to our soldiers, the civilians, and our families, as well as our organizations and units out there in terms of readiness. We'll pull this all together in the next maybe week to 10 days, and we're going to have a larger discussion with the services and OSD here shortly to see what they've all been able to capture on it as we continue to improve how we're seeing ourselves in this area. But I know a lot of you are experiencing this. If you have some thoughts or real concrete examples, because that's what we're looking for out there, please share those with your leadership, and we'll include those in our analysis as we continue to look at this. And hopefully we'll be able to stem the turn on this as a nation and turn inflation back down, so we're not dealing with some of the impacts as we all are right now with it. So, but yes, inflation is something we're having to deal with up here in ABO as we look towards fiscal year, closing out 22 and looking towards fiscal year 23 and beyond. So, but great point, Mike. I also want to touch quickly on our systems that we use. We could not do it without our systems. In other words, our GFEBs, our LMP, all those systems that we use to enable the resourcing and provided at Echelon that we do out there. So I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. Ramsey and our DASA Financial Operations Directorate.
Hey, sir. We're going to come back to you before we move forward. So you did a splendid job with 23 budget brief. And before moving forward, can we talk a little bit about the best 24 upcoming? And actually in relation to the audience that's watching right now, if you can kind of give some insight on potential things that they should be looking out for from your point of view.
Yeah, I think well, we're very close to finishing up the program build within the Army. So I'm going to talk mainly schedule on this because all of this is pre-decisional at this point. We're very close to finishing that up. We will then get as I call it, the big switch where the database gets turned over to the Army Budget Office. And that really begins our process for the budget estimate submission. And it doesn't mean we wait until then. Our teams have been heavily involved in what this year we're doing a combined program budget review where we've been going through and seeing exactly what the program evaluation groups or PEGs, how we organize to build our program here within the Army, have been decisions that they've been having to make to adjust programs for fiscal year 24 and beyond. Because we have to think in time at this in the department. Out there in the field, they're primarily looking at year to year, the current year and the next. We have to think beyond that. And actually, we have to look behind too for all the expired funding as well. But our main focus is on current year and then the budget year. So our team's been engaged in that. So they've been seeing some of the decisions the Army senior leaders are considering at this point and providing input that we need to, in some cases, to help inform those decisions as well as a part of that process. And we sit through the leader meetings. Ms. Spangler is involved when the secretary and the chief sit and get their updates, for example, and General Chamberlain and I at our levels in various forums as the Army works through this process. But we expect we're going to get about 6 weeks to build the budget estimate submission for fiscal year 24 before we turn it back over to OSD. And then that will formally begin what they call the fall review. And that's a combined review again from the OSD's CAPE director as well as the comptroller and their review. And we'll be heavily involved in that as a part of that process as they review each of the services submissions and the defense agencies too. And the fourth estate that have to submit to overall form the overall DoD budget with that. So lots of time between here and there in that sense. It seems like a lot of time, but boy, it does go fast. So,
sir.
And 6 weeks is not enough to do what we would need to do, but it's what we've got. And that's what we've been aiming towards. We've been able to do it in that short a time period over the past couple of years, but we would prefer primarily about 8 weeks normally. So just to give you an example of what a normal budget estimate submission bill would look like. But thanks for the question, Sergeant Singh.
Mr. Merman, this one's over to you. You know, I was expecting you to actually come on with some Mets gear, but nonetheless, the bow tie actually looks good. So you talked modernization, right? And you kind of specifically talked BA8 software. But there was a question that came in and they asked, and again, if you guys have to answer for this, let's go forward with it. Otherwise, someone else can jump in. But to support innovation and modernization, do you think the current OPA/RDT&E UFR process is adequate to modernize the Army at the rate required to maintain technological overmatch?
So that's a great question. Thank you. And I will tell you the process we have right now, in Mike Merman's opinion, and we actually have a PBBE commission that has just stood up, and some of our past leaders are actually participating in it. And I believe Secretary Hicks is meeting with the commission this week. Mike Merman's opinion is the OPA RDT&E concept is an industrial age process. And nowadays, I feel the technology is moving in a much more rapid fashion. For example, I know both General Bennett and I have some kids, and we have never sustained those video game machines, the PS2, the Wii's and stuff. The new technology just comes out and replaces the old technology. We never had to fix it. So the idea of needing to perhaps move systems to sustainment and or purchasing things with procurement, it may be perhaps a little antiquated. We fund lots of times software sustainment with procurement dollars. So I believe this new BA8 concept is really showing, especially in the areas of technology and specifically software, of what the possibility is. And the whole key there, Sergeant Singh, is reducing that timeline from when the requirement is identified to actually putting something in soldiers' hands. I know for a fact, kind of along the same concept, I spent in the Air Force about 10 years trying to develop a new handgun, and we never delivered anything. And right now, Army Futures Command has been able to put the next generation squad weapon in soldiers' hands. And in the 23 budget, we have 6 squadrons, I believe, six battalions worth, I think. 6 battalions worth that we're trying to get procured, sir. So great question. I believe it's due for a relook, and hopefully the PBBE Commission will look at it and perhaps suggest some changes to Congress, because that authority, of course, flows from Congress to the Department of Defense. Over.
Awesome. Thank you for that information, sir, and your opinion on that question. And now we will head over to Mr. Michael Ramsey. Sir, over to you.
And we'll hit the screen.
Can you hear me and see me? We're good?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Ramsey, I'm the Director for Financial Operations and Information. Big title. What's interesting about that title, I think I'm the probably in DoD within the FM community, probably the only person with those responsibilities for both financial operations and obviously the oversight of the audit, but also the information systems portfolio. I think that probably evolved because of certainly the recognition that the audit is a data-driven process, and particularly the way that we provide information to our independent auditors from the kind of the enterprise level, and it has to be reconciled with a number of systems across the Army, about 68 of them that we have under our account that are relevant to the audit, and so it's a challenge, and so we recognize that challenge, and I think that's why the roles were combined in this organization. What's interesting in my background, and as I bounced around a little bit, I'm neither a technologist nor an auditor, but I'm really blessed to have a very effective and efficient staff over here in FOI, led by Ms. Natasha Anderson, Ms. Myrna Medina, Mr. Will McMillan, Ms. Anita Robinson, who just left us, and I appreciate their expertise, but also their patience, because they get lots of questions from me as I grow into this role since I've been here since January. A couple things I'd like to talk about. First thing on the audit, Ms. Spangler had talked about how it's an important effort, significantly important. I think there's a degree of pent-up frustration, I think, with progress towards that. I think that comes down from the top. I think from my perspective of being here and outside of the audit for most of my career, one is I think that we maybe have underestimated the scale of the reform required to meet and sustain auditability. In my experience, it's probably one of the most significant reform efforts that we have to address, because it really is the Army being measured as an enterprise. The end-to-end processes that the independent auditor for the financial statement looks at is dependent on the integration between financial management and logistics and human resources and military personnel and all those things, in order to be able to show and sustain to the American public that we're good stewards of the resources that we're asked to support here in the Army. It's interesting as we look towards obtaining that clean opinion in the future, the kind of things that we have to do to be able to get there, not only from a systems and a data integration perspective, but also in terms of understanding the terminology. The terminology that in the audit community is one that I'm struggling with right now, oftentimes because it's not necessarily the same language that we use in the operational Army in terms of readiness. And so one of the efforts that we're really trying to do is try to operationalize as we move forward in the audit, so people in the leadership particularly understand the value of the work that's ongoing and the tremendous efforts that are ongoing out there to become auditable, if you will, and to understand those things. That it's been an evolution, if you will, to get to auditability. And so those activities are very important because it sustains over time. And so it has to, what we do in processes to systems to data have got to be able to sustain over time. It doesn't change with personalities. Those are government standards that we are trying to achieve. But I think it's a worthwhile effort. It really shows, you know, the Army is by nature a very disciplined organization. We're disciplined in how we execute our mission. I think the audit will add and allow us to demonstrate our discipline in our business processes, and that's why I look forward to the challenges that come with meeting the timelines and the standards that have been set for us. As I mentioned, it's a data process. It's a data-driven process. And so from the financial information system side, we've got a lot of activity going on. The first and probably the most visible is the Army has made a decision on a strategy towards enterprise business systems convergence. As you all know and probably deal with on a daily basis, we have 4 primary systems that are SAP ECC, which is a prior generation of enterprise software that are reaching end of life. And those GCSS Army, which is the log system, GFIBS, our financial system, and ASIP in between those 2 systems, which is kind of a integrator, and then obviously the logistics modernization program on the working capital fund side under Ramsey. The Army strategy that we're working through now is to converge those 4 systems into a single common core that will be defined as we work through this and find that balance between, hey, it's a log system, it's a finance system, it's actually both. And I think where we're at in that process now is that we have to define those standards, and things like the audit are helping us understand what that standard is for, particularly for data, right? So we may all be, used to the 200 characters in a line of accounting. Probably we have to expand that so that it has the integration capabilities into the contract writing system, into the personnel systems in a much different way than we currently have in those things. So that's an exciting effort for the community, but also for all of you as finance professionals. So as we look at EBSC and try to define the future systems and adapt our processes to the commercial off-the-shelf processes that are embedded in that software, we've got to have the professionals and the talent with the eyes on the target to make sure that we understand how it works within the government, that we own it, and that we can provide the feedback to the software providers and developers with the information that says, yeah, it works, it doesn't. As Mr. Merman was talking about defensive cyber and the agility between an operator who sees a problem and the ability to turn to a developer and develop a tool or a fix, that agility is something that we have to develop and organize around within our community in order to be able to meet the changing requirements as we navigate the budget world, but also then maintain and sustain the auditability on the back end. So those are the things that are in my portfolio. Enjoy the work, and any questions you may have to me, I'll put you back on schedule. Over.
Right, sir. So actually, just looking at what you just told us, right? Talking about, the future systems that the Army's already looking at in relation to, getting it all under one umbrella, I guess, to say the least, right? There was a question that came in that actually asked, do you envision a future culture scenario where auditors, HR, financial management, and logisticians may be trained together to help shape increased auditability aims? And I know obviously the system is, it's still like in the developmental phase, but are there already like training scenarios where, all different, personnel are coming together to help build that?
I think where they'll come together is on the data, right? So again, we're a knowledge-based organization. The integration and of our processes are going to be digital. And so I think we'll have those communities of functional communities that have to do the things that they do best: talent management, software management, cybersecurity. But we have to build the digital threads and the discipline within our systems and within our processes to make sure that we don't get disconnected from each other as we go forward. So I think it's dynamic, but there's going to be certain discipline, if you will, in terms of how we set our data and how we interact data digitally between our partners that will bring us together. Over.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that quick explanation. I'm sure if we kept you on for an hour, you could give us even more information, but we are constrained on time. So at this time, for the audience members, we're actually going to go over to Ms. Kimberly Scott, who is in charge of workforce development. So over to you, ma'am. If you can unmute yourself, ma'am. No worries.
Sorry, sir.
There you go. There you go.
Gotcha. Good morning, Army professionals. I am Kimberly Scott, the new director of Workforce Development and Training in ASA FM&C. Pleased to have this opportunity to chat with all of you, and tell you a little bit about my office and what we do for the financial management community. Our primary focus is to ensure the military and civilian comptroller workforce is trained and certified to perform essential functions and postured to adapt to the changing fiscal technology. We collaborate with the Financial Management Schoolhouse and the Civilian Human Resource Agency, ACMA, on the FM career paths to retain and develop talent within the Army. We also work with the Secretary of Defense Comptroller Office and our counterparts at the other services and defense agencies. One of our key functions is managing the Army's DoD FM certification program. I get a lot of questions, basically, what happened to the old proponency office? We are the old proponency office, but we're not. Mostly no, some yes. So most of the functions of the old proponency office did decentralize to the new ACMA agency, which is Army Civilian Career Management Activity, which services under the CHARA and the G1 community. And also with HRC, the military portion went to military HRC and the Financial Management Schoolhouse. So we are here to make sure there's one consolidated message for the workforce, and that's what we've been doing. I've also received questions on, my background or my experience with doing this and working with the community. I have worked for Army for about 28 years. And prior worked for Army Budget Office and Financial Operations Divisions within ASA FM&C, and have been a DA intern and worked for Military District of Washington, MCOM, Army South, National Guard Bureau, and Army Reserve, serving as an accountant, budget analyst, and program analyst. And I'm also a Syracuse University graduate for the DCP program. So many of these programs I'll be working to help manage and bring forth for you, and to increase the programs, improve where I see fit. I have a short time with you, and I have some key dates I'd like to share with you this morning. And it's by means not all dates, but just key ones we like to share. Sergeant Singh, can you bring up that the chart, the timeline?
Yep.
Sure.
You can start discussing it.
Okay. As you can see, today is May 20th, and as you can see, the CEDM application deadline is Monday, May 22nd. And the CEDM program, if you're unfamiliar, is the Senior Enterprise Talent Management. And it's a means by which the Army prepares senior civilians, GS 12 through 15 or equivalent, to assume positions of greater responsibility across the department. The application period is normally early March to mid-May, and it has about 7 modules, but I'll just mention the The most popular is the Senior Service College program, the Defense Senior Leader Development Program, and Command General Staff College. There are key dates on this timeline that go up that fall into June that you can follow, and we will share with you for the program. And if you need some more information, they have a CEDM website, which I'll also share with you on how to apply. We are expecting the announcement for the cohort 2024 Defense Comptroller program at Syracuse University in June for the military and civilians. We also have the Syracuse University short courses, and I put those on this timeline too. And there is one Army Comptroller course coming up on June 13th through the 24th. There are still a few civilian and military slots available, so if you're interested, please send me a Teams chat or an email, and by Monday, May 22nd, and we'll get you in and get you situated. We also have one in August, an ACC course, but USAPAC is helping to sponsor, and it will be on Hawaii time zone, not Eastern time. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. We also have a senior resource management course, which is for GS 14-15, Lieutenant Colonel level on August 22nd through 26th. All these courses are virtual courses held on Zoom by Syracuse University. The items that are in red on this timeline are tentative and subject to change. But it does give you when the Syracuse 2024 applications are scheduled to be due for military and civilian, and then our panels that will be held through November and in December. We recommend that if you are interested in many of these programs that you schedule the GMAT exam this summer and to prepare yourself for, and these courses are for civilians, GS 11 through 14, military, captain through lieutenant colonel, and then enlisted, senior enlisted, sergeant, master sergeant, sergeant major. So please let us know if you have, please let me know if you have any questions.
Ma'am, one question. Is this timeline or the anticipated courses for the fiscal year 22, are they on the ASA FM&C website, or are they listed anywhere else, or is this being distroed via digits?
This is being distroed via digits. They're not on the website at this time.
All right. Do we anticipate, putting it on the website as a collective source so that anyone can go and take a look?
Yes, sir. We are working on this program right now, trying to update the website and also provide Teams. We're working on a Teams page and a SharePoint page and the ASA FM&C website update. So there are many changes that are coming to this program to bring this information out to the community during for different vehicles and all different types of modes of communication. We are working on that. But right now it is currently via emails and through the component part, the command POCs distributing this information. So we will be improving that this year. That's one of the main focuses we've been working on.
Awesome.
Okay. Next slide, please. One of our main focuses we have are the we oversee the Army's DoD FM certification program, which our total community is about 15,000 Army users, and we're currently 97% FM workforce is certified, which is good. The metric from OSD is to at least have 95% of your workforce certified. So we are meeting that goal and exceeding it. We do have a non-compliant population who are past their 2 years due date that we are working on. That's the 400 number you see, the 434. We are working with them in the command POCs to help us bring those individuals into compliance. And we also have all the ones that are certified, FMers that are certified. We have about 5,067 who are due for their CETs this December 31st. So I would ask that you not wait until December to post your CETs, because many of our FMers have the training, but they wait until December to post them in the FM online system. And I ask that you try to do it now as much as possible. And there are, at each command, there is a component administrator to assist you. And if not, we have a email account that you can send an email and we will help you. And we do anticipate doing training on how to post your CETs, a 30-minute training. We're going to do several a month starting in July to help people to try to get as many as possible done before the end of summer, with just a few stragglers towards the end. That is all I have for you today. It's been great talking to you today, and I look forward to improving and expanding the Army workforce programs and opportunities, and look forward to any questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks for that introduction and brief that you gave on things that you're currently working on within your division as well. Currently, we don't have any questions. The questions that came in have been answered through your brief. So at this time, we're actually going to head back to the Honorable Ms. Spangler and Lieutenant General Chamberlain as well. And we actually have some questions for them. And then if you want to redirect the question, then we can go somewhere else. So over to Honorable Spangler and General Chamberlain. So, ma'am, there was actually a question in regards to the CARE program, right? And so the question actually says, can you highlight some of the purchasing power improvements throughout HQDA from the CARE program?
So Sergeant Singh, I'll jump on that one. The CARE program was initiated back in 2018. General Horlander and then Secretary Esper, the direction was, hey, we cannot continue to have a loss of purchasing power to the tune of billions and billions of dollars every year. Over the course of the going on now 4 years, we have reduced the loss of purchasing power by over 50%, and we have put most of that money back into the readiness requirements that the commands identify each and every year, either through UFR processes or just in being able to provide that money back to them in their budgets.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, for that. The other question that we had, and I'm not sure if maybe you guys will tackle it or you're going to send it over to the DAB and the DDAB, but it was in relation to inflation. And they said the question really goes towards, cost of living allowance. So if that's already being looked at in relation to inflation.
So, Mark, I don't know if you want to talk about that one or not, but I would just tell you that this discussion that we're going to have coming up with the Deputy Secretary of Defense and the undersecretaries of all the different military departments is going to cover the range of impacts from inflation. So the housing allowances, the cost of food growth, all of those things are going to be topics. The question is, what can be done about them in 22, and what is the what needs to be done about them in 22, and can it be implemented fast enough to make a difference to people? So the discussion is going to focus mostly on 22, but of course it's going to have the impacts in 23, and there needs to be then a consensus decision from the OSD community of what we can go forward with to correct or help people in those situations.
Roger, thank you, ma'am. Another question that came up was really in reference to a timeline for systems, right? And I believe Mr. Ramsey kind of touched on that briefly, but is there anything concrete in regards to timelines for future systems and conversions?
So, Mike, are you going to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it, ma'am. So as I said, we're still going through that process. Our history with developing enterprise business systems is not the greatest. This is a program that is very the scale is almost breathtaking when you look across all the log systems and the financial systems. So they're being very deliberate about it. We've gotten the green light to move to the next phase, which is kind of do a prototyping effort, and we've resourced that. But that will be in that prototyping effort will define the timelines, the sequence of functionality and a number of things that will come out of that as we learn more. Over.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer, sir, and clarification again. Back to you, ma'am and sir. You know, at this time, and we've rounded up to the hour. I know you have a busy schedule, so your final statements before we close out.
So, ma'am, I'll go first and then I'll turn it over to you. I'll just leave a couple thoughts. One, want to make sure that we thank our families. We can't do what we do in the Department of Defense, Department of the Army without the support of our friends and families and our spouses. The support that they give us allow us to do what we do. So thank you to all of them. And then the thought that I will leave you with is sometimes $20,000 at the right time and place can have a much greater strategic effect than $200 million at the wrong time and place. We have to, as resource managers, help our leaders work through that process. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, and I would just say, Sergeant Singh, thank you for pulling this together and for being the moderator on this. I know we did a lot of discussions about different things, but I would also want to thank the workforce for tuning in, because I think it shows your engagement, your involvement, and I think that's what we want from you. That's what we need from you to make us a more effective FM community. And the last thing I'd say is continue to be curious about everything, right? Ask questions. We need analytical thinking. We need your best ideas, and we need to bring them forward to our commanders. So that's all I'd have.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the Finance Corps, right, we would like to thank everyone that tuned in today, especially, you know, ma'am, sir, the DAB, the DDAB, Mr. Ramsey, Ms. Scott, you know, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to share some information with the enterprise. We had over, 900 folks that tuned in for this, so great turnout. And again, thank you very much to the audience members. We want to thank you for tuning into this week's FC Profession series, and look forward to your continued support. And again, be safe, take care, have a great weekend to support and serve. Over.
Wow.